Welcome to Your Health is Wealth podcast. The podcast invites you to embrace the profound truth that your health is your wealth. I'm your host, Kristen Burke. This podcast aims to take you on a journey into the landscape of alternative medicine, integrative practices, and holistic healing options that empower you to thrive in mind, body, and spirit. Today in our segment titled
Episode 10, Ayurveda Alchemy, Transforming and Healing the Soul, Body, and Mind. I'm so excited for this episode today. Today we're going to explore the power of Ayurveda, an ancient system of healing that focuses on balancing the soul, body, and mind. If you ever felt like you're struggling with your health or just starting to explore the world of holistic wellness, this episode is going to be an eye-opener. Today, we have a special guest, Radhika Erving, an Ayurvedic practitioner whose journey into healing system is truly inspiring. Radhika grew up in a health-conscious family that prioritized organic food and regular exercise. But despite all of that, she was diagnosed with Hashimoto's Thyroiditis at the age of 12 and was told that she needed medication for the rest of her life. And that seems to be a common story today with a lot of our chronic illnesses. It wasn't until later in college at UNC Chapel Hill that a friend introduced her to Ayurveda, and it completely shifted her perspective on health. After diving deep into the teachings of Ayurveda, she found herself not only healing physically, but also discovering a new career path that would change her life forever. Today, Radhika is here to share her personal journey, from her experience with autoimmune disease to finding healing through Ayurvedic practices like diet, the seasonal routines. She'll also talk about the deeper connection between the soul, body, and mind, and how Ayurveda can offer healing on all levels. We'll dive into how Ayurveda can help you restore balance, find clarity, and ultimately heal in ways that may really surprise you. Radhika, thank you so much for being here today. Let's just jump right into your story. You initially studied communication at UNC Chapel Hill. It's University of North Carolina, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. Can you tell us about what drew you to Ayurveda? How did it become a passion of yours?
When I was growing up, I think it's important to acknowledge that I grew up in a household where good health was emphasized. We ate home-cooked meals. We ate only organic foods. My parents encouraged me to exercise. I would swim. I would go to the gym. I would lift weights. I would run. I ate healthy foods. I never really indulged in fast food or junk food. And in spite of all that, when I was 12 years old, I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And I was going to have to take medication for the rest of my life. And my dad just put out there, is there anything else, maybe some dietary changes that could be made? And of course, the endocrinologist at Duke Hospital had no idea. They were like, I don't know, maybe there could be, I don't know. So that was my option, take this medication. And that's what I did. And it didn't really make me feel any better to take the medicine. I felt pretty much the same. None of my symptoms changed at all. So when I got to UNC, I met a friend there who knew about Ayurveda, and they showed me some of their books, and I got really into it, and I would borrow the books and read them, and we would read them together. We'd do the little dosha quizzes and stuff like that. I thought, this is really cool. It really clicked for me. Before in school, I didn't really know what I wanted to study or what I wanted to do. And I was like, man, I really wish that this school had an Ayurveda program because I would definitely study that. But it wasn't an option at UNC Chapel Hill. It isn't an option at UNC Chapel Hill to study Ayurveda. And because of that, and because I didn't see Ayurveda in the area where I was living, I didn't really think it was a viable career option. So I just carried on with my studies. And I liked what I was studying, but I wasn't super passionate about it. It wasn't like my calling or anything. When I graduated, I lived with that friend for a while who introduced me to Ayurveda and followed a diet with her that I now know is like a light seasonal diet. I was eating what was in season and I was eating lighter, easier to digest foods. And now I know as an Ayurvedic practitioner that was helping my body, one, digest better, two, to just get rid of toxins that had accumulated in my body. So when I was following that diet, which I was following this light diet for like maybe 2 years, maybe even more, I felt better. I felt lighter. It was easier for me to wake up in the morning. My energy levels were better. My digestion was better. I was feeling better and it was really refreshing. So I loved Ayurveda. I was like, I loved when I was reading about it. I loved how intuitive it was. And I loved my experience with it, which was limited to my limited knowledge. And I was working in restaurants actually because I wasn't very passionate about my major and I still hadn't really figured out what I was going to do with it or what I wanted to do with my life, what kind of career I wanted to pursue. I was like, I was working in the restaurant industry and the restaurant that I was working at just shut down one week and we had very little notice. And it made me realize it doesn't really matter what job you're working in. Anything could change at any moment. And why do something why not just pursue my passion? Why not just go after what I really care about? And it was obvious when I was working at the restaurant that Ayurveda was my passion. I would talk about it with people who would come in the door, just customers at the restaurant. I would talk to them about Ayurveda. It was a sort of health conscious kind of restaurant, so it wasn't too wild to be talking about Ayurveda with people. Yeah. And that's how I pivoted towards Ayurveda from there. I was like, this is what I want to do. The restaurant shut down. I want to study Ayurveda and I want to study Reiki. I put it out into the universe. And about a month later, I ended up with a job at a Panchakarma clinic, just magically fell into my lap in a way. And I also ended up studying Reiki. So I ended up doing both of those things. And I am really glad that I decided to just follow my heart and follow the open doors.
That is so important too. I think before we get too far into this, what is Ayurveda? There's what I've noticed is, and just so everybody knows, Radhika was one of our teaching assistants I have been finishing my Master's of Science in Ayurveda at Maharishi International University, and she's one of the TAs. And Bright Light provided really excellent feedback, really helped me with the learning journey. It just has a ton of knowledge. What I've noticed when I've spoken to people about Ayurveda is folks don't even know what it is. The first thing they say or ask, how do you spell that? And I didn't know what it was either until a few months before I started the program. I had never heard of it. So would you mind just giving a brief overview of what it is and some of the principles behind it?
Definitely. How about we start it off by spelling it?
Oh, great. I love that.
It's Ayurveda, Ayurveda. And it translates to the science of life. And Ayurveda is essentially, it's a spirit, mind, body medicine. And I would put it in that order directly because your consciousness or your connection to consciousness informs how you're doing mentally. So when you're taking care of yourself spiritually, or however you want to put it, you're connecting to your higher self, to consciousness, however you want to put it. When you're doing that, it puts your mind into what's called a sattvic state of mind, or sattva is the mode of goodness. So it puts your mind into the mode of goodness. That in itself is going to give you a better mental strength. It's going to give you better mental health, and it's going to help you make better decisions. And the decisions you make are going to impact the health of your body. So when we're connected to ourself or our consciousness, we're going to make the best decisions for our bodily health. That's really what Ayurveda is in a nutshell. Encompasses the environment that you live in. We look at that. We look at your diet, your digestion. We're looking at your constitution, or kind of just like how you are, like your base level. This is Kristen, and this is how she is. This is her imbalance. We look at both separately. We look at the digestion, what kind of digestion the person has. We look at the level of toxins that have accumulated in the body. We want to look at their strength. How resilient is this person? How much strength do they have for a treatment? How much vitality do they have? There's a lot we look at. And then once we put it all together like a puzzle, it's at the end of the day, it's a very individual approach, Ayurveda. So I'm not just going to treat you the way that I would treat my sister or someone else. Everyone is different. Imbalances manifest differently for different people. I'll use COVID as an example because I think everyone's very familiar with it. Some people had a wet cough when they had COVID. Some people had a dry cough. Some people had no symptoms at all. Why is it that different people would have different reactions to the same disease? It's the same disease, it's COVID, but people are experiencing it in a different way because they're different people. They're different. So that's what Ayurveda recognizes, and we aim to treat the individual.
Beautifully said. And I've often heard it's one of the oldest forms of medicine, and that the difference between that, when we compare it against Western medicine or modern medicine in the US, is it's never changed. It's been consistent for hundreds of years. So that brings me to the next question. Where does it originate from?
Oh, yeah, good question. It originates in India. And some people might think this is silly, but the information that's written in the Ayurvedic texts was basically given to the seers or the rishis. So people had visions and received that information, and then they wrote it down. And that's been carried on for generations and generations.
And the Vedic text, a little bit on that of what those are.
Yeah, we're fortunate to have many texts that we can look at in Ayurveda.
Would you be able to add or provide links to where people can find these texts in case they're curious? And then I can certainly provide a little bit of an intro as to what they are and how they pertain to Ayurveda. When you talked about constitution, and correct me if I'm wrong, but constitution, so that folks understand, is when we look at someone and we look at the tendencies for their imbalances, would be usually their physical attributes and their behavioral or personality types. Is that what you would like, whether they're one of 3 doshas predominant?
Okay, so when I look at a client and I want to assess their constitution or their prakriti, or what you might have heard of as your dosha, if you're listening and familiar with Ayurveda, I think people always want to know, what's my dosha? So when I see someone, I'm taking a snap look at someone, and I'm looking at their physical qualities. And then, yes, I'm looking at their mannerisms. How do they walk? How do they talk? What's the texture of their hair? What do their nails look like? I want to know that, because it's all of that's giving me a lot of information about their health and about them, the shape of your teeth. It's really amazing. But generally, when it's the prakriti we're talking about, it's just like that person's, I don't want to say essence, but just very quick, this is what you are like. And in balanced state, this is what you are like. And then I look at the imbalance. And yeah, it does, like you said, take into account the mental state. But I almost put that separately, because sometimes you have someone who is maybe pitta. And the mental gunas are different. They're actually rajas, tamas, and sattva. So I like to separate that out a little bit. Maybe their mental state's a little more tamasic, And that tells me that maybe they're eating too many like heavy foods, mushrooms, things that are like in the mode of ignorance can bring you down. Tamas can be associated with things like depression. But yeah, I do consider all of it. It's like delicate. You even consider someone's digestion when you're considering what their prakriti is, but they can be separate and different too. So it's the whole person. And yeah, it's just who they are. And you're born with a prakriti. You're born with a certain prakriti. And then if you move somewhere or something happens in your life, it can change. Your prakriti can change. And we also even go through different stages of life. So there's the kapha stage of life when you're a child and a teenager. And then when you're in your young adult life, you can say you're in your pitta stage of life. Kapha. Pitta stage of life starts around the age of 30. And then when you're in your older age, then you're in your vata stage of life. And that's just to say that these doshas are associated with those stages of life. Okay, why is childhood the kapha stage of life? That's because children tend to they still have their baby fat, as we say, and they are soft and sweet and unctuous. And you'll even see that in that stage of life, they're more prone to kapha issues like cold, kids getting colds all the time, stuffy noses, ear infections. That's all related to kapha. In the pitta stage of life, you might think maybe they're going to have some rashes, some heat, maybe some hormonal thing happening with pitta. So at each stage of life, there can be different kind of expectations as well.
And this is a perfect time to go over and lay the groundwork of what doshas are. There might be some folks that are listening in that have no idea what they mean. Do you want to just provide a quick overview of, not quick, but a brief overview of what doshas are and the qualities within, and then how would those relate to some of the physical attributes in a person?
Great idea, Kristen.
I should have asked that on the onset, but we just jumped right in.
With doshas, I'd say in the beginning, there are the elements, which are air, space, fire, water, and earth. And those elements, those 5 elements, make up everything that exists, from like a blanket to a couch to a person. Everything's made up of these 5 elements, according to Ayurveda. So then the doshas are made up of the elements. So vata is going to be made of air and space. Because it's made of air and space, we know it to be very light. It's subtle. It's mobile. It's actually the only dosha that is mobile. So it's the only one that moves. It's a mover. It's clear, light, subtle, dry, rough. We've got pitta. Pitta is water and fire. Pitta, I usually think of more as fiery, but it has a liquid quality as well. So pitta is warm, it's liquid, it's pungent. It is
like flowing like lava, right? Yes.
Lava. Sharp as well. Yeah, those are probably the main qualities I think of with pitta. Then we've got kapha. Kapha is earth and water. So both pitta and kapha have water in them, so they do have some similarities. So being earth and water, we think of kapha as very stable. Stable, it's heavy, cool, it's soft, unctuous. Oh, pitta is slightly oily. So you'll see vata's dry, pitta slightly oily, kapha oily. Vata is light. Kapha is heavy. Vata is subtle and mobile. Kapha is stable. Kapha and Vata tend to we see them as like they have opposing qualities. And Pitta has some overlap with Kapha because of the shared water quality.
So you think about earth and water, it's like thick as mud, right? or clear as mud.
Yes.
Versus when you're looking at Vata, Vata is very clear, but you're not going to have that same quality with Kapha. When you're looking at a person, what type of attributes would you notice for a Vata predominant person?
Okay, yeah. Vata people tend to have, this is going to sound so basic, small. Small is Vata. I think of small as Vata. A small, thin lips, Vata. A small frame, Vata. Lighter weight, like Vata quality. Light, smaller eyes, Vata. Smaller eyebrows, small, Vata small. Pitta is like medium. Medium frame, medium eyebrows, medium eyes, sharp gaze, because Pitta's got the sharpness, sharp wit. Pitta. The color red is associated with Pitta. If someone has red hair, I'm thinking, oh, Pitta. A rosy complexion is more Pitta. Darker complexion is more Vata. And a pale complexion is more Kapha. Kapha, I think of as like big. So a bigger nose, full lips, white teeth. That's more of a Kapha quality. Soft skin, more of a Kapha quality. Unctuous skin, thick hair, that's Kapha. A bigger build, that's Kapha. Yeah. Does that kind of... Yeah.
That makes sense. So people understand the differences with the attributes in the person. And I think what you were saying is those types of qualities, if you were Pitta, Vata, which I'm Pitta medium frame, but I have Vata qualities, that would be the tendency of what would likely go out of balance. Is that,
that's
what you would see?
Accurate. Yeah. Yes. Generally, it's what your constitution is. You're more likely to go out of balance with those things. And when you are, say, Pitta, Vata, like yourself, and you have a Kapha imbalance, then it becomes a little bit more complicated. Right. And also just not as common. So, yeah, there's a lot to it.
It's true. Let's go back to what you were talking about with now we have as a basic foundation of what that is. We'll probably intertwine some of those other questions so people have a more of a global view of what Ayurveda is and how it can be very beneficial to them. You were talking about Hashimoto's. We're diagnosed with Hashimoto's at the age of 12. That's pretty young for Hashimoto's. Did they ever determine what the root issue was for that? Causative factor?
No, they did not. I kind of wonder if Western medicine ever does that. I don't think I've ever had despite my asking, I don't think I've ever had a doctor that's told me the root cause of anything, or it would be the way they share that information is a little different. In Ayurveda, when we think about the root cause, it's more specific to the individual and what you're doing versus just this is what's happening in the body. We want to know, why is that happening in the body? Why is that happening? What is it that's going on in your life? Or what is it that you're putting into your body that's causing this to happen?
Seems pretty simple.
Yeah.
If you think about it, what am I eating? What's my lifestyle? What am I thinking? What am I doing? Just going back to basic fundamentals, really what it seems like. Yeah. Did you ever determine what your root issues were as you were moving through that?
At the time, no, but if I look back on it, especially with what I know now, I could definitely pick them all out, or pick out a lot of them, I think. So I had a very healthy diet, like I mentioned, but it wasn't the right diet for me. So I'm more Vata in nature, and my digestive type is Vata. It's a Vishama Agni, we say. More of a Vata type of digestion. So I was eating foods that were not compatible with my digestive type. And it was like my digestion was always disturbed. Always. So that was a huge contributing factor. And then trauma was a contributing factor. And I would even say could well be some kind of, like, my stepmom always said I had a sort of goiter in my baby picture. That there could even be something from maybe when my mother was pregnant with me, maybe how she was eating or what she was doing. There are things beyond that could also have contributed.
Vishama Agni, it's Vata type digestion. What does that mean? So not everybody is going to understand what that means.
Right. So we talked a little bit about Vata. Vata is light, it's mobile, it's subtle, it's dry, it's rough. So because it's those things and my digestion aligns with those kinds of qualities, I need to eat things that are more unctuous, right? The opposite of dry. I need to eat foods that are going to be more grounding. So like we think stable. I need to eat foods that are warm, foods that are sweet, sour, and salty tend to be best for that type of digestion.
It was irregular digestion, so you had to stabilize it with the unctuous foods, the heavier foods, because you were too light. So the light creates that irregularity. So you're trying to stabilize it. So creating that balance.
That's right. Even more to it than that, Kristen. Actually,
Yeah.
I even think like beyond your digestive type, there are all these ways that you're supposed to be eating your food according to Ayurveda. I was not doing that. Like a lot of times I would eat my meals standing up or walking around. I'd be eating something walking around. In Ayurveda, you're supposed to sit down when you're eating and stay seated after you're eating for at least, it's nice if you can sit for 15 minutes. And then there's things like incompatible foods that don't pair well together. When you eat them together, that they can cause problems. I did that plenty and I had no idea. I think some really common ones are like beans and dairy. A lot of people have a bean burrito with some cheese and some sour cream and not compatible foods. Harder to digest. Something like, this is a very common one that I see a lot and that I was doing as in my growing up years, eating like a salad with your cooked meal. The salad is raw. And raw foods and cooked foods do not pair well together, according to Ayurveda. That's something that I did almost every day of my growing up years, had a salad with my meal. It was really bad for my digestion. Other things that like generally are not good for anyone are cold foods, like an ice water or the occasional ice cream that you might have. Cold smoothies. People think, oh, smoothies are so good, but it's cold. It's not good. Or if you're putting like in your smoothie, you're pairing berries don't pair well. Well, fruit doesn't pair well with a lot of other foods. And a lot of smoothies now, you'll see they're putting fruits and vegetables together. It's actually not a good combination.
Yeah. And we're taught so differently here in the US. It's so backwards and we're raised that way here. You have the food pyramid, certain aspects of what you need in your meal. A lot of it is actually violating that pairing. I was able to remove causative factors like you, but the one thing I couldn't, and this is before I even learned about Ayurveda, is I kept having such bad indigestion, and it was the pairing of foods. It was exactly what you're talking about, which is just really mind-boggling. And the other thing we do in the US is everyone needs to eat it this way. And then, so we do it one way. Okay, you eat more dairy or drink more dairy. And then, okay, now let's move away from dairy. Let's do non-dairy products. Eat meat, don't eat meat. Every time you turn around, there's a new rule or a new guideline, so to speak. And it's a one-size-fits-all approach, which clearly does not work. Said with the food. Just a side note too, you talked about the throat, and that is the throat chakra.
Right.
That's your ability to speak for yourself, your empowerment to speak your mind, speak your story, all of that, right?
I'm really glad you brought that up too, because that's something that I think about with all my clients when they're having a problem that's localized in a certain area, what chakra is involved and what emotions might have been at play there, because even you can have an emotional cause to a physical problem.
Absolutely.
That's
wow. And we don't look at that with Western medicine. We do consider emotions, but there's this surface approach to root, right? It's like when we look at causative factors, okay, you have this disease because you got a virus. What led up to that? And what led up to that? And what led up to that? Let's keep going. And it's so interesting. when I look at industry, right? When we look at different industries in the world, we're required to do root cause analysis, like to the nth degree, deep. Why did this system fail? Was it a systematic failure or was it an isolated event? We're not taking the same approach for our health, which is mind-boggling to me. And I never actually thought about this until I started studying Ayurveda. And I thought, if we took the same approach and we put in the workplace in some of these industries, like quality assurance, and we had quality assurance of the health, I bet you we'd find a lot.
Yeah, I think what our healthcare system lacks the most is a preventative care method. And I think
Right.
that when it comes to being able to identify causative factors, if you can just avoid them altogether, if we were educating people, if doctors were educating people on what diets should look like and how to exercise, what exercises people should be doing, and things like that, it help people so much to just avoid the causative factors. That's what we really want.
It would, but I think that some of the physicians are taught differently in their medical schools. So they may not even know what those causative factors are,
I don't
which
think
is why we need Ayurveda
Yeah,
as an integrative approach.
I
And
agree.
psychotherapy, because it's supporting the mind, or even Vedic psychology, which I'm trying to take some courses on to broaden my knowledge in that area. I think it's fascinating. I'd like to go back to the comment with your physician saying you would have to be on medication for your whole life. And I had a similar experience. And I did read a book, and I can't remember the name of the book. I will link it in the podcast, where there was this medical doctor that said he started utilizing neurolinguistic programming in a positive way, because it can be used either way, just like anything, right? And instead of telling his patients or clients, oh, for example, you have cancer and this is how much longer you have to live. Because now, as soon as someone provides a suggestion, especially someone in a position of being a physician, which a lot of people look up to, right? A leadership position, then that person is now locked into that category, or what we call bounded, limited opportunities, right? You know where I'm going with this. And what we want is an unbounded, unlimited opportunities for other things to be available to us so that we could access. So how did you feel when you heard that?
When I heard that, I think at first I was like, if it's going to help, let me try it. But it became very frustrating because it wasn't helping me. And I'm like, I'm going to have to take this for the rest of my life. And it's just not helping me at all. Not feeling any better. And yeah, to have to take a medication for the rest of your life it's not great news. Oh, so I was really happy when I started working at a Panchakarma clinic in Los Angeles, and my boss there found out that I had this autoimmune disease, and she treated it with Ayurveda. And I went through a 3-week treatment, and I stopped taking my medication at that time. At the end of the 3-week treatment, my treatments were done and my thyroid was functioning, and all my symptoms started to go away, and then they were all gone within a couple months after that. And I've had my thyroid levels checked many times, and they've always been normal over the course of the years. Normal. I don't take medications anymore, and I'm feeling great. So I was taking a medication. It wasn't helping me. Now I'm not taking any medication, and I feel really good because balance has been restored to my physiology.
That's amazing. It really is. And 3 weeks. So all these years, by the way, how long or how old were you when you went through the Panchakarma clinic?
My good question. That I started working there 2000 years ago. 25.
You could say what year.
Oh, I started working there in 2018. Okay.
Oh, okay. So 6-ish years ago, something like that.
Yeah. And over the past 6 years, my levels have all been stable.
So from the age of 12 all the way, which all the way till, I'm assuming you were in like your 30s at the time?
That was at least, that was around like more than 10 years later, more than 15 years later, just much later. Yeah.
I mean, so from the age of 12 all the way through to that point, you're graduated from college at that point, right? Okay. You now won't go through a 3-week Panchakarma. We'll talk about what that is in a minute. Treatment, which I highly recommend for everyone to check out.
Yeah.
Experiencing similar things, chronic illness. And now you're not on medication at all, but all those years you were on it, it wasn't helping you. You weren't feeling better. It's essentially putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole, so to speak. Sorry for the analogy, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
And potentially it was actually causing other health issues because it's a medication that and this is just me, any kind of chemical like that has a potential of disrupting your digestive system and potentially blocking absorptive qualities of nutrients, action, or whatever. So now you're feeling better and your thyroid is balanced. And so it seemed like your body just needed a little jump start. It needed a little help removing causative factors, which you did, and changing what you were eating, your routine and all of that, and how you were eating.
Yeah.
And then cleansing the body of some of those impurities so that your body on its own can go back to homeostasis or balance and maintain that on its own. That's amazing. And there's I hear so many people that have thyroid issues. I had nodules on my thyroid.
I did too.
Yeah, same thing. But it also was trauma induced. Which is interesting because throat chakra, we talked about how they're connected and speaking up for yourself kind of thing, empowerment. So I love hearing these stories. It gives us faith. It helps to support faith, right? Because hope is still in the area of uncertainty, but faith that we know it's going to be okay. We just have to figure it out. That's all. That's amazing. So now knowing this with your own experience, which there's always a silver lining when we go through these things, right? It's a challenge walking through the health issue and what potentially caused it. But now we have much more wisdom to not only help ourselves, but now it's an opportunity that when you see your patients or clients coming into you for help, they have a similar story. I'm on this medication and the doctor said, I have to be on this the rest of my life. How do you approach that topic with them?
I think it goes even back to something you alluded to earlier about how you don't really want to tell someone you're going to have this for the rest of your life, being definitive about something like that. And with my clients, and having just in my career at the Panchakarma clinic and in my private practice, I feel like I am constantly just getting to witness miracles, and it's really beautiful and incredible. And one thing that I will tell my clients, any client, especially the ones who are going through something more serious, is I believe in miracles because I see them. I might tell them some of the things I've witnessed in my line of work. And what I believe about miracles is that if you want a miracle, if that's your desire to receive a miracle, I think you have to be open. You have to be receptive to it. So you don't want to limit yourself by saying, I'm not going to get better, or I'm only going to get this much better, or anything like that. Anything could happen. Let's be open to whatever happens. Here with Ayurveda, we're just working towards restoring balance to the physiology, and what can come out of that can be very incredible and very powerful.
I love that. And whenever I envision this with miracles, it seems free. And when there's freedom, I get the infinity sign, right? Which is unbounded opportunities. Like anything can come in. And when your mind's open, meaning you're talking about receptive, right?
Yeah.
And positive, and it's all about perspective of, I know it's going to work out. I may not know how, but I don't need to know how. It's okay. I have faith. I'm going to let that come in. I'm going to work with it versus the limiting factor, the limiting view. And that's the path. it's like a bumper, right? Like when you're bowling and you have those bumpers and the ball can only go here or here, versus if you remove them, the ball's going to go wherever it's going to go. Having that openness, I think, is key. And what seems to be the biggest aspect that can set people back is fear. Goes to my little saying that I always hear in my mind with Franklin D. Roosevelt: the only thing to fear is fear itself. And so no matter what your perspective is or viewer, whatever is, that can be the biggest hindrance on healing is fear. Karma. Just so people know what Panchakarma is. Can you just give us a little overview and examples as to what kind of treatments people would go through?
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, I'll say Panchakarma is not for everyone. And even there are many things that can be addressed without Panchakarma. But Panchakarma can also be for even people that are perfectly healthy as a preventative measure. It's seen as really great. Generally, they say the best time to do Panchakarma is at the change of seasons. Oh, first, let me just break down. Panchakarma. Pancha is 5. Karma is action. So Panchakarma is Ayurveda's seasonal detox. And there are 5 actions or 5 different karmas. And there's, in the traditional Ayurveda, it's associated with the season, which action is going to take place. So at the end of summer, it's bloodletting. At the end of fall, it is preventative, or this is like laxative therapy. At the end of winter, it's going to be basti or enemas. In the spring, it's going to be vamana, or like self-induced vomiting. And there are 2 types of bastis, 2 types of enema, so that's 5. Each season, there's a different one. And depending on the client, I won't even say the imbalance. That's important. So we're looking at the whole person. So everyone's treatment's going to be different. But yeah, generally, most of these Panchakarma, you prepare for them by taking a medicated ghee on an empty stomach in the morning. And you'll take it in increasing amounts. It's medicated, herbalized ghee. And what kind, it just depends on you. So someone would have to prescribe it to you. Some Ayurvedic practitioner would have to recommend a specific one for you. You'll take the ghee. How much time are you going to take the ghee? It also depends on you. Some people can take the ghee every morning for 21 days. They're taking the ghee and they haven't even done the karma yet. They haven't experienced the action. They're just taking the ghee. What is the ghee doing? The ghee is going into the body and it's pulling toxins out of the body and it's bringing them to the digestive tract. So some of the deepest toxins in the body are going to be in the bones and the bone marrow. Those are some of the harder ones to access. It takes longer. They're in like the deeper parts of the body. So it can take longer to extract those. It has to be done very carefully. If it's not done carefully, then the toxins that we want to flush out using whatever karma it is that we're going to use, right? If it's going to be a virachana or a laxative, right, then we want the toxins to come out in the bowels. But if it's done incorrectly, you might see a rash. You might have toxins coming out of your skin. That's not fun. So make sure you're working with someone who knows what they're doing. But yeah, you'll take the ghee and then depending on what karma it is, you're going to do something else. Usually with, let's say, again, virachana or the laxative therapy, you're taking the ghee, then you're going to do some induced sweating. That's going to open up the heat of the sweat and the sweating, whatever modality they use, because that also depends on the person. Sometimes it's going to be dry heat. Sometimes it's going to be a wet heat to induce sweating. But regardless, the heat is opening up the channels in the body. You want the channels to be open when you purge because they're closed. You want them open so things can flow out. And if they're closed, that can cause complications. So it has to be done very carefully. Yeah, so you do that, and then you do your sweating, and then you take your laxative and you purge. and that would be Virachana. That one in particular, Virachana, or the laxative, it's associated with Pitta primarily. So that's to flush out excess Pitta. And that's, again, like I said, it's at the end of fall. When you do your Panchakarma, you have to follow certain rules. Like, it's best if you're not being overstimulated, so you don't really want to be looking at a bunch of screens during the day. It's really supposed to be a quiet, meditative experience. No engaging in sexual activities, no swimming. You don't want to move around too much. You don't want to be like traveling a lot by car. It's better if you're just in a stable environment. It's nice when you can go to a Panchakarma clinic and just stay there, or stay at least close by, because Vata will be irritated from all the movement. So you also want to keep Vata calm during your Panchakarma. Keep yourself calm mentally, emotionally, physically, just keeping everything stable. Your diet during Panchakarma is generally lighter, a lighter diet, warm, soupy foods, easy to digest foods. And after Panchakarma, you have to increase your digestive fire again. So again, with using laxative therapy as an example, or Virachana. So you take the ghee is actually amping up your digestive fire as you're taking it on an empty stomach. And it's amping up your digestive fire. Then you take your laxative. When you take your laxative, digestive fire gets really weak. But you've purged all that excess pitta. Then after this, you're going to slowly bring your digestive fire back to a normal, good place. And then when your digestive fire is strong enough, you need to rejuvenate after Panchakarma. So you're going to do what's called Rasayana Chikitsa. And there are different substances you can take, different herbs or formulas. It just depends, again, on you, what it is that you'll take, and for how long as well. And that's pretty much Panchakarma in a nutshell. And it's said that during Panchakarma, you are cleansing the 7 dhatu, or the 7 tissue layers in the body, which are rasa. Rasa is like lymphatic fluid. Then we've got rakta, blood. Rasa rakta, mamsa is muscle. Meda is fat. Ashti, bone. Maja, bone marrow. Shukra is your reproductive. So at the end of your Panchakarma, you've cleansed all 7 dhatu. And it's also said that you've cleansed 7 years of toxins every time you do Panchakarma. So it's pretty amazing. Quite a cleanse. Everyone's body has organs that are cleansing the body. But there's just so much, especially in the modern day, that you just can't avoid. Toxins that you just can't avoid. And it builds up, it accumulates, and becomes so much that your organs that are cleansing the body, they're doing their work, but it's just backlogged. So Panchakarma is a great way to just clear all that out.
I think some people in the older ages can understand this when they have to get a colonoscopy. They have to take that, whatever that yucky stuff is that they swallow, and it cleanses out their system. But I'll tell you what, your digestive system is primo because there's nothing in there that's irritating it. So it's at a pretty decent, maybe not for all, but many people that I've spoken to, at a pretty good steady state. That's essentially what you're doing, but in a holistic way, the whole body, all of the tissues, not just the digestive system. So your digestive fire is what we call Agni. And the importance of that is?
Oh, everything. Okay, so the digestive fire, why it's important. Okay, when you are not properly digesting your food or your emotions, you are accumulating toxins in the body. That's number one. So you want to be eating the right foods for your digestion, just so that you're not accumulating those toxins. Now, the second part of this is nutrition. You could be eating foods that are very nutritious, but if your body can't digest them, or you can't assimilate the nutrients, so what good is it doing you? It's not doing you any good. And then I would say when we digest our food, we end up producing what's called in Ayurveda ahara ras. This is the nutritive fluid. That's the nutrients right there. Okay. And then your stool. Okay. Your stool goes away. That's the waste product. The nutritive fluids go and they nourish all 7 of those tissues that I mentioned earlier: rasa, lymphatic; rakta, blood; mamsa, muscle; meda, fat; ashti, bone; majja, bone marrow; shukra, your reproductive. So sequentially, it's nourishing all those tissues. And then at the end, the most refined product is called Ojas. And Ojas is formed. And Ojas is your vitality. It's your vitality, it's your strength, your resistance against disease. It's the sparkle in your eye. It's the unctuousness of your skin. It's very important for your health and well-being. So all of those things, really, because and then we can relate these different tissues to different things too. So rasa, or the lymphatic fluids, we'll think of it as. It relates to the heart. So if there's something wrong with your heart, I'm thinking, oh, what's going on with your rasa? What's going on with your digestion? And then another thing, in each of the tissues, you can relate them to different organs, different things happening in the body. It's complex. There's a lot to it. And then that's number 2, nutrition. Number 3, and this is something that's recognized by Western medicine now as well, is that there is a microbiome in your gut. I think everyone's very familiar with. You also have a microbiome in your brain and in your lungs. And all 3 of those communicate with each other. So your digestive health can even inform the health of your lungs, your respiratory system. It can inform your mental state as well. So I think that if that doesn't show you the importance, I don't know what will.
What's so interesting about that is COVID in the lungs, but what actually manifested that? My theory is fear. There was a whole lot of fear. A whole lot of fear about, you need to take this thing, you need to do this, you need to do that. You're going to be limited. We're going to cut you off from being able to see people in the hospital, like a myriad of things, right? That was the main issue, fear. That affects the brain. Now people are afraid they're going to get this, whatever this thing is, right? They're unfamiliar with. And that you could actually manifest that, because once a person is thrown off a balance, that creates a vulnerability. And now when people are nervous or worried, agitated, they might eat the wrong foods, may have already been eating foods. We hear stories about people being isolated and consuming more alcohol or having lack of access to good food, good quality food. And then disease manifests in the gut. But all those 3 are connected. So it's very interesting to, I just reflecting back on, going back to what you were talking about with the digestive fire, is just so folks understand. With Ayurveda, you're talking about vitality. That's all of that affects hormones, your thoughts, your endocrine system. They're all working together. And that's a big difference that we see with Western medicine, is usually there's one area that's targeted, right? Like, for example, if someone has high blood pressure, they're put on high blood pressure medicine.
Right.
But what's causing that? Maybe there's something going on with the renal system, because they are connected, right? Digestive system. So if they have inflammation in... Yes, exactly. They have inflammation in their kidneys and their urinary tract. That can affect the heart too, but because of the pressure aspect. But yeah, the mind controls all of it. So just putting that out there so people understand that Ayurveda looks at all of these different systems and not just 1 or 2.
Right.
Considers everything, which is magical.
They all relate. They're all connected to each other. They're not separate.
Exactly. So you were talking about Reiki, right?
Yeah.
What made you interested in the Reiki aspect?
Good question. When I was working at that restaurant, a long time ago, there was a client or customer. See, I'm so used to talking about my clients now. There was a customer who would come in wearing all white, and her energy was just so incredible. And actually, like, her name is Danielle. And before she would even walk around the corner, before I could even see her, I could feel her energy like coming towards the building. And she would fill the whole space when she came in with her energy, and it just felt really good. So I knew I wanted to learn from her, and I learned as much as I could from her. I still want to learn more from her. An angel. I thought of her as an angel. And that inspired me to want to learn Reiki. And since then, I've studied many different energy work modalities, and I like to combine them all. But for me, how that fits in with Ayurveda is, again, that Ayurveda is that spirit, mind, body connection. And I feel that energy work fits in along the lines of the spirit. And when we are addressing issues at that level again, or like reconnecting people to self or reconnecting ourselves, facilitating that work, that brings in sattva to the mind. And when the mind is sattvic again, the body's we're gonna make the best decisions for our body. So that's how I see all that fitting together really well.
And Reiki's energy, just like everything's energy. There's just different types of energy. But like you were talking about with Panchakarma, it's one way of cleansing the body. But with Reiki, you're moving energy within the physical body, the physiology, when we're doing yoga, asanas, when we're just exercising at all. If there's stuckness within the body, that helps to release some of it. It's just like what you're talking about with the digestive fire, the Agni, when it's not able to effectively break down food, fully digest the food so that you don't build up the toxic blockages. Those other types of energies, like our thoughts, other aspects, can create blockages also. So sometimes that physical movement, moving the energy out, can unblock that. So Reiki is one way you do that, right?
Yeah. And even just the way you're talking about this is making me think about Marma, actually.
Oh,
Because I think Marma, for those who don't know, is like Ayurveda's version of acupressure. So there's acupuncture where they're needling. Acupressure is where you're like pressing a point, right?
yeah.
And there are many ways you can press a point. You can hold it. You can do little circles. You can apply an oil to that point. You can apply some kind of tool to the point, whatever. There are a lot of ways to do it. But Marma is something that Ayurveda uses, and it acts on the physical body. It acts on the causal body. It acts on all of you, all layers. The layers you can't see, the layers you can see. The Marma is working on all of it. It's like a very subtle practice, very subtle tool. And before you do a Marma session, you really want to connect again to consciousness, like before you do it for yourself or for someone else, because it really does act on consciousness. Prana is ideally flowing through your body. And prana is flowing through the body with consciousness. So when we have some kind of issue like a blockage, which is generally caused by ama or those toxins, maybe something gets localized in an area. So maybe you're congested, right? So this is blocked and we want to open it up. So there are these points on the body that we'll use. But again, when you're touching them, you're like bringing consciousness back. You're like restoring consciousness to that area of the body. You're opening the channels again, and you're allowing consciousness to flow there where it was not. It's an interesting thing to think about because everything's made of consciousness. But I think it's when we become unconscious that we develop imbalances in the first place. How we become unconscious, right? If I've just walked one of my clients through their protocol, and they've come out on the other side and they are restored to balance. When you're in balance, you always know what your body needs. Always. I'm tired. I need to go lie down and rest. I need to use the bathroom right now. I'm not going to wait. I have to go to the bathroom. I need to burp. I'm not going to hold it in because I'm in a public place. I'm just going to politely cover my mouth and burp. It's funny, these little things that we are taught to maybe block, or maybe whatever it is, we're just ignoring our body's cues. I'm full from eating, but I want to have a little sweet. I'm full, but I'm going to have a little sweet now because it just sounds good. Okay, doing that every now and then, it's not going to hurt you too much because your body will make up for it. You'll catch up. You'll be fine. But if you're doing things like that all the time, then you're like disconnecting yourself. You're disconnecting from yourself. So you're like creating unconsciousness almost. You're creating this, whatever it is, the nose. You're creating the blockage. You're creating this disconnection from consciousness and in your body. And that is how imbalances are born. So it's very easy to avoid imbalances by listening to your body, but it's also very easy to fall into them and just be like, I'm indulging in the chocolate cake. You've got to be careful to just be mindful. Be mindful. That's really what it's all about. Be mindful, honor yourself, love yourself.
You're talking about being connected to self, and your body is amazing because it always tells us what it needs, just like you said. For example, if we have pain, our body is saying, stop doing that, right? You have to figure out what that means. It could be a multitude of things. Or you're fatigued. Hello, get some sleep. Doesn't mean you go to sleep right then. It just means maybe the actual daily routine needs to be adjusted. And if you're not sleeping, what's causing the lack of sleep, restful sleep at night? Like things to just take a step back and have some form of awareness to be able to tune into the body and always know what's going on in that. I use this as an analogy. So when my digestive system was a mess, I would say maybe temporarily it was good, but most of the time it wasn't for many years. When I started the Ayurvedic program at Maharishi International University, and just learning about the food compatibility, when to eat, how much to eat, how to do it, how to cook your foods, all of that stuff. Now I started to feel better. And after I got to that state, each time I would take a risk and eat something I knew wasn't good for me, I would feel it immediately, whereas I didn't always. And so it makes it very obvious. And because you're more connected to self, become more conscious, right? Because you're in a state of balance.
Right.
When you're in your physiology mirrors consciousness, when you're feeling better, that means you have a higher state of consciousness. The other thing you talked about was when we choose to eat that thing and whether we choose to eat it too much could throw us out of balance. That's a form of escapism, possibly attachment to identifying with, if I do this thing, it'll make me feel really good for a minute, but then there's that effect afterwards that we have to deal with that we forget about and go, why did I do this? So that again is that disconnect from self, where we're looking at something external to feel better, but it quickly reminds us that's not where we're going to feel, how we're going to feel better. How we're going to feel better is to go within and feel into that. And that gets me to the next question. Can you explain what consciousness is? It took me a while to figure out what this was, even though it was being repeated to me, even in class, because it's not tangible, right? So any way that you feel would be a good, effective way to explain that to folks.
Consciousness is you. Consciousness is everything around you. Consciousness is everything that exists. Consciousness is everything that doesn't exist. Consciousness is when you close your eyes, when you can't see. If you couldn't see, you couldn't smell, you couldn't taste anything, you couldn't feel anything. None of your senses were working. That would be like the silence part of consciousness. That's part of consciousness. Dynamism. That's the part of consciousness that we are living in all the time. And there's both. And yeah, consciousness is everything that exists. It's everything. It's everything. You are pure consciousness. That means that because you are pure consciousness, your potential is unlimited. I believe that. You are a creator. Every choice you make, it creates the life that you're living right now. You are consciousness. You are divine. You are powerful. You are pure. You're consciousness, even if you don't know it.
It's so peaceful. Even just hearing you say that, it gives a sense of peace. I'm going to think we'll switch into another question here. Actually, before we go into our next question, can you define a couple of terms
Yeah.
used, Suffolk and Tamasic? Can you explain what those mean?
Okay, so sattva and tamas, or sattvic and tamasic, both referring to mental gunas or mental qualities. We'll say they're like the mental doshas. So there's rajas, tamas, and sattva. Rajas is the mode of passion, exactly what it sounds like. And then tamas is the mode of ignorance. So it's what it sounds like. And then sattva is the mode of goodness. That's what those three mental states are. So when someone has a mental imbalance, it's never going to be like, oh, they've got too much sattva. They've got too much goodness. Never. It's usually rajas and tamas that are creating the imbalance, or the mode of passion and the mode of ignorance. And how do we address that? We address that by increasing sattva, or increasing goodness. And it can apply to a lifestyle as well. There are certain foods that are considered sattvic, like milk and meat are considered sattvic foods, almonds, sattvic foods. Those are also foods that will be really good for your ojas, or your vitality. Overall, sattva is the way to live. You want to live a sattvic life. Living a sattvic life would be like living clean, would be sattvic. It means maintaining good hygiene, keeping a clean environment is sattvic. Sattvic can apply to many things like dairy products. So ahimsa is like nonviolence. So there are sources of dairy products that are ahimsa. That's sattvic. To drink milk that comes from an ahimsa source, or a nonviolent source, is sattvic. Yeah. I hope that explains it.
It does. So good qualities like softness and gentle and all of those things that make us feel peace through food, through actions, lifestyle is what's going to bring that in. Let's talk about milk and ghee. I'm really happy you brought this up, because I know a lot of folks who stay away from dairy. They say, I can't, I'm lactose intolerant. I used to be one of them, by the way.
Me too.
And guess what? I'm not anymore. And you know why? Because I boil the milk
Yeah.
and I put cardamom and cinnamon in the milk. And so it makes it easier to digest. And people are not necessarily buying into this because they've been told by their doctor or whoever else that they can't drink dairy. So can you explain why milk and ghee, for example, are so beneficial to the physiology and the mind?
Okay, yeah. Wow. Ghee comes from milk. Okay. So milk itself, it's got a lot of kapha qualities. Cow milk has a lot of kapha qualities specifically. Goat milk tends to be more beneficial for pitta issues. Anyways, kapha, so the cow milk it's very unctuous. It's sweet. It's cool in nature. It's heavy. It's got a lot of those kapha qualities. and a lot of the qualities that align with Ojas or vitality as well. So in that sense, milk is a very great food. Another quality of milk is that it penetrates the tissues very quickly. So a lot of times we'll eat a meal and we'll digest it, okay, normally, but the nutrients are not going to reach your seventh dhatu or your seventh tissue layer, like we were talking about earlier. The seventh one is reproductive. So again, rasa, lymphatic, rakta, blood, mamsa, muscle, meta, fat, sarakta, mamsa, meta, ashti, bone marrow is maja, and then shukra, reproductive. Talks about how you have the nutritive fluid, and the nutritive fluid is sequentially nourishing each of these dhatus. That takes time. That takes a good amount of time. It takes more than one day. It takes more than 1 week. It takes more than 2 weeks for the nutritive fluid from the meal that you ate today to nourish all of those dhatus. It's not going to be any time in the next 2 weeks, at least. It's going to take longer. And milk is a special food because milk, your body absorbs it almost instantly. So it's one of those that when you use it as a carrier for herbs, for example, you'll know that the herb is being carried through the tissues, being carried through all 7 of those tissues, and it's being carried through much quicker. It almost, I wouldn't say like instant, but much more instant relative to eating a meal. So milk is nourishing and it's quickly nourishing. So that's very special. Ghee is made from milk. Ghee is clarified butter. So if I had some milk at home and this is how I do it. Okay, there's more than one way to do it. If I took my milk and I made some yogurt and then I whipped the yogurt, then the butter would separate. The buttermilk and the butter would separate. So then you've got the liquid and the solid. You take the solid part, that's your butter. You put it into a pot on a very low temperature so you don't kill those cultures from the yogurt. And when you're making the ghee, basically the butter melts and then the milk solids separate, which you'll see it happen. And you'll know what it is that I'm talking about when you see it. And the milk solids will separate and they'll turn a nice brown color, and then you'll strain them out. The milk solids are gone. What you're left with is ghee. Cultured ghee in this case, which is really the ghee that they talk about in Ayurvedic texts. Ghee is particularly good for vata and pitta dosha. And ghee is something that we talked about earlier, like relates to Panchakarma, taking ghee on an empty stomach to pull those toxins out of the body. Of course, that's herbalized ghee. But again, it's because ghee is penetrating through those tissues more quickly so that it can extract the toxins. So that, to some level, is a demonstration of why those are special.
The other thing I remember is milk is one of the few, if I have this correct, food items that can actually satisfy all of the tastes. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So if you're hungry and you need nourishment quickly, like you said, it penetrates all of the tissues very quickly, but also it's satisfying, giving that feeling of wholeness or fullness, so to speak, because you satisfied all the different tastes.
Yeah. Yeah.
So beneficial with that. Now, the clarified ghee, a lot of people ask me this question. Would that have the same effect on me as butter? I eat that every day.
No. No, because it's not the same. You're removing the milk solids. That's not in there. So people who are lactose intolerant are generally going to be fine with ghee. You have a milk allergy, that's a different thing. But if you're lactose intolerant, generally you can have ghee and be fine.
Same with milk. If you heat it up, usually.
Yeah, I was lactose intolerant, and boiling the milk was that was all I needed to do. There's like some kind of chemical reaction when you boil milk. I don't remember exactly what happens, but it changes the milk, and then the milk becomes easier to digest. And even from that Ayurvedic perspective, cold dairy is not really good. You don't want to have anything that's cold in your body. So when things are warmer, they're easier to digest. So boiling that milk is helpful.
And it's lighter. It makes it lighter. And I think the chemistry is it denatures some of the proteins that are really difficult to digest. So that's what also makes it easier to assimilate as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. The only reason I know this is because someone was challenging me yesterday saying boiling milk is the same as pasteurization, which it's not. Pasteurization is actually not even going to the same boiling. Milk has a pretty high boiling point, right? So when you boil it, it actually heats it up to a higher temperature than pasteurization. And they're both used to get rid of the bacteria. But the difference is with boiling it, you're actually decreasing some of those proteins that are difficult to digest. The other side of the argument is you're destroying some of the good proteins and nutrients in milk, which isn't necessarily the case, because if you avoid it altogether, you're not getting the benefits. Which brings me to another question really quickly before we get into our next topic is uncooked vegetables. That like the food pyramid, raw fruits and vegetables. And there's some fruits certainly you can eat raw, right? Like mango, for example. Apples and pears aren't a good idea, but let's talk about why are vegetables not a good idea to eat raw.
Oh, yeah. Wow. They're just harder to digest. Again, it's that very simple principle of like warm food versus cold food. Anything that's cold is not as easy to digest. Anything that's raw tends to have more vata qualities in it. It's raw vegetables are more rough. And then when they're cooked, they become more soft. That's more kapha. Rough is more vata. And those vata qualities, that roughness, that coldness, the dryness of raw vegetables makes it harder for your body to digest. So we cook them, we turn them into something that's soft, something that's warm, and something that's more unctuous. And it becomes easier for our body to digest. If you think about it this way, like someone once that I worked with explained this and I loved it. It was like the stomach, right? If you eat something cold, then your stomach, it has to stay in your stomach until it can be like heated up enough by your body. This is all this extra energy your body has to put into like cooking the food, basically, to be able to digest it. So just make it easier for your body by cooking it before you eat it. That's the overall concept of that. And it even links back to what we were talking about with Panchakarma and toxins, that we want things to be easy to digest, because while our body can digest, while our body can cook the food internally, or our body can detox on its own, we want to make it as easy as possible, because there's just enough environmental toxins, there's enough stress that creates mental toxins, there's enough pesticides and things being sprayed in the environment, things on the foods, even when you're buying organic foods, it's that your body's already doing enough. Even if you're just being like, even if you're following your right Ayurvedic diet,
Right.
your body's doing enough. So make it as easy as possible for your body to digest your food.
Totally makes sense. And I've tested that out and she's on point with that. Let's go back we're going to go into mental health. We know that mental health affects physiology. So how would you be able to summarize how you feel or what you've been taught or what you've experienced on how mental health is connected to physiological health?
Okay. So I think we've already talked about how there's the microbiome and the brain and the gut and the lungs. So obviously your mental health can inform the health of your lungs and your gut, and vice versa. The gut can inform your mental health, and the health of your lungs can inform your mental health. And that's why it's important to breathe in clean air and avoid smoking, eat the right foods, and cultivate a good mindset, because they're all connected. Another thing about the mind and emotions is the relationship to the endocrine system specifically. And the endocrine system it encompasses so much. But the core concept is that you have your pituitary gland and your hypothalamus in your brain. And the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus are processing all of your thoughts and your emotions. And that means it's really important what your thoughts and your emotions are, that your pituitary gland and your hypothalamus are going to tell the hormone glands that are throughout the body, like your thyroid, what hormones to release, how much. That starts in the mind. So you really want to have a good mental outlook. You want to have that sattvic mind, sattvic thoughts to help have better hormonal balance. And our hormone system, it can affect so much. It can affect how well we are digesting our food, our metabolism. It can make people gain weight or lose way too much weight, or this kind of thing. It can make you feel like you're too hot or too cold. It encompasses quite a lot. The growth hormones, there's so much to it. And the endocrine system, it just seems like it just impacts the whole body, really. And that begins in the mind.
Goes back to the consciousness that you spoke of earlier with that, and how, imagine that though, that if you're under duress, stress, trauma, PTSD, your body, fight or flight, it's telling itself to release certain hormones. So if you're in fight or flight state, it's going to release those hormones to get you out of there. And it's like over exerting those hormones, which is going to throw everything else out of balance and disturb other areas of physiology, like your digestive system, which can now take away the nutrients that go to the tissues. And this is why we start to see physical illness in folks when we're looking at trauma, PTSD, stress, which seem to be predominant root cause of illness. I've actually just spoke with a MD at a recent conference, and I brought that up because there is research that talks about this. It's all over the place as far as what stats, right? Depending on what group of people were studied. But she said, in her opinion, and I'm paraphrasing, right, that is such a small percentage in her that are actually going to get illness as a result of PTSD, stress, and trauma. You can imagine the look on my face. I respect the person and their experience and their degree and what they do for a living, but I respectfully disagreed with that from someone who personally, in few years back, was diagnosed with complex PTSD. And I went through all of that and struggled with it with health. And I've interviewed many people, and that seems to be a common denominator for people who have chronic illness, whether it's diabetes, fibromyalgia, autoimmune, digestive issues, thyroid issues, neurological issues, cancer, all seem to have the same story. Not one of them yet. I'm sure there's someone out there, but every single one of those folks, that was something they experienced. They could very easily relate it to, which is interesting to me. So anecdotally, I think we can draw that conclusion. Maybe we need more research studies, and I'm sure there are challenges with that. That brings me to another question, though. Looking at trauma, PTSD, and stress, and based on your experience with your clients and patients and what you've heard and what you've learned, do you have an opinion in regard to, does it tend to impact women more than men? That's the first question. The second question is, or does it impact them the same, but it manifests differently? Meaning it can have an impact on similar systems, but how it manifests might be different. Different chronic disease, something like that.
Okay. That's a really interesting question. I think what I've noticed, I'd say a lot of the clients I have experienced, everyone experiences stress. Stress is a causative factor for every single client that I have seen. Stress. I don't, it's very rare that you'll meet somebody who doesn't have that. So that's big. And then the trauma part of that, not every client that comes into my doors has PTSD, but some of them do. And when they do, it's absolutely plays a role in whatever condition that they are dealing with. And addressing that aspect is essential. And then in terms of how it manifests differently between men and women, I see both men and women in my practice. And I have seen men and women who have PTSD and very stressful, maybe careers or lives. I don't know that I've seen enough. I haven't done a study on it. It definitely, it impacts their health always. I'll say that's as much as I can say about it. It always impacts their health. Yeah. And how they carry it is different. Certainly, because I think men have more of a tendency to repress their emotions, and men have more of a tendency to not want to appear weak. They have a harder time releasing emotions from their bodies, and they tend to hold them more from what I have observed. Women, it's easier for them to talk about their feelings generally. Many of the women in my practice seem more in touch with their feelings, probably because they talk about them. I don't know. They give them more attention and more nurturing. And I think that's notable. So when women have PTSD, they'll get the care they need and they'll work through it. Men, they won't always get the care they need. They won't always work through it. Can't say always about anyone, but more often than, and that can be tricky. When there is something like trauma, I like to integrate and do energy healing sessions with my clients. Not everyone wants to talk about their trauma, and it's not always useful for people to talk about their trauma. So sometimes an energy healing session can be much more beneficial to those people, in my experience. And TM, Transcendental Meditation, I also think is one of the greatest resources for anyone who experiences stress, but especially those who have experienced trauma, because it helps you to release those stored emotions and that stress from the physiology in a very easy and effortless way. And meditation, again, it's something where you don't have to talk about it. And I think plenty of people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to go to therapy and talk about it, especially the men that I've seen, but women too. Not everyone wants to talk about it. So sometimes those are better options for people.
It makes sense too, because reliving instances over and over, people just don't want to go there. They want to heal and they don't want to keep reliving it. And TM, Transcendental Meditation, by the way, you can find that at tm.org and learn as to what that is. I'm just going to, I talked about this on my last podcast. I want to bring it up again. Stat, 50 million people in the US, I think it's 53 million now, since 2020, have some form of mental health issue, right? Depression, anxiety, whatever. And of that total number, 35 million is related to suicide and drug addiction a lot of the times, or folks that it could be a pharmaceutical drug, it can be illicit drug, the alcohol. There's numerous things, right? And it's essentially to desensitize the body so they're not feeling so much, however that is. TM, there are studies that show that it's actually really beneficial for folks that are experiencing drug addiction, who are experiencing mental health aspects that can potentially lead to suicide. And why? How? I'll just give you an example of how it makes me feel, and if you want to share too. It gets you to this blissful state. It's almost like a heavenly state where you just feel like you're floating, like your whole body is vibrating in this high vibrational frequency. and you just feel so happy and peaceful. And like, no matter what, everything's just going to be okay. And that's that connection to self that you're feeling. That's consciousness. And the more often you feel that way, it actually feels much better than any type of pain medication you could possibly put in your body, because those medications provide some form of side effect, right? This doesn't have a negative side effect. It's only positive from my experience. It helps with digestive issues. There's studies on on the tm.org website that talk about decreasing cardiovascular disease because of stress, right? Reduction stress. It increases the intellect, increases the likelihood that you're going to be connected and access quickly your internal intelligence when you're taking things when you have to recall something. It actually increases that. It improves that rather. Also helps with trauma, addiction, like I mentioned. Is there anything that you want to share on your experiences with that, and if you've recommended it to any of your clients or patients?
Yeah, I do recommend it to my clients and patients. I find it to be hugely beneficial. Personally, in my personal life, it's been very beneficial for me. Just shedding, for me, TM, it's like you shed your body, you shed your mind, you shed this existence as, for me, I shed this existence as Radhika, and I'm just consciousness. Well, TM, just experiencing consciousness, my true self, and reconnecting with that and being that. And that's who I am. And that's who I am, even when I'm Radhika in my body. Definitely helps to, when you shed all of that, you're just shedding all the stress, you're shedding all this stuff that you've attached to, that you've connected with. And it's in a way that TM does it in a way that's really effortless. For many people, meditation is difficult. For many people that I've met, it's hard for me to just sit down and be quiet, or it's hard for me to just sit down, or it's hard for me to just lose all my thoughts. It's not easy for a lot of people to just do that. TM works with all those stray thoughts that you have coming in and just letting it be. It's all okay. It's a part of the TM. It becomes part of your TM. So it's really, really cool, really accessible in that sense. Easy form of meditation. So for that reason, I often recommend it. Yeah, it's a great experience. And even in terms of clients of mine who learn TM, it's been very beneficial for them, especially people with heart issues. I've seen a lot of benefit. I've seen a lot of benefit with that in my practice. Gut issues, I've seen a lot of benefit with that.
Yeah. Sleep.
Yeah. Sleeping better. Yeah.
Amazing. In Maharishi Ayurveda, we take the pulse. We won't get too much into this because it'd probably be too much information, but it's not like we're taking the beats per minute. We're looking at the reverberations in each of these three fingers, Vata, Pitta, Kapha, right? Pick up reverberations in the different tissues of the body to give us an idea of imbalance. And a lot of the times we can detect an imbalance before it actually shows up in a diagnostic test with Western medicine. And I actually recently experienced that myself couple of years ago when as students in the Maharishi Ayurveda program, we can volunteer to be clients, guinea pigs, so people can take our pulse and evaluate us to see what our imbalances are. And there was something that was detected, and this was about a year and a half ago. And I talked to my Western medicine doctor, and she says, no, that doesn't even make sense. You're not old enough to have that issue. You don't need to have that test. And I actually really love her as a physician for the most part. She's awesome. But there was and so she just said, all right, let's do the test. All right, that's fine. And lo and behold, the test came back consistent with what was indicated. This particular test with what was picked up, but the other tests weren't revealing this. And by the way, this could have been a chronic illness, but it's acute now because it was caught early. But a lot of the times we don't catch things so well into it, which takes more time to try to possibly reverse that imbalance. But anyway, it's pretty interesting. I want to go back really quick to you talked about earlier what helped you with your thyroid and Hashimoto's, how you change your lifestyle and foods, change your diet. You did mention something about didn't necessarily eat processed foods. Let's talk about processed foods. Let's talk about the impact of what they can have on physiology and what could they lead to? What kind of imbalances do you typically see with that?
I think the reason that people should avoid processed foods from the lens of Ayurveda is that they're like unconscious foods. They're foods that don't have any prana. They don't have any life. Processed foods are like lifeless foods. And when you put them into your body, again, this is circling back to something I said earlier. There might be nutrients listed on the food item that you're reading, the package. It says these vitamins are in here and whatever. If your body can't digest it, then all the nutrients that are in the packaged food are useless to you because your body can't digest it anyways. Processed food, it's not natural, and it's not something that your body really knows how to digest. You can become, there's a sort of concept in Ayurveda of something that can be pseudo-suitable for someone. So like you have grown accustomed to it. So in that sense, you can eat it and maybe not feel terrible afterward. Like you said earlier, Kristen, that when you were in that state of balance, you found that you were more sensitive to those things that you were not as sensitive to before because you were more aware and you were more connected to self. It's the same thing. It's the same concept. It's that concept of what becomes like suitable for your body, but it's not. It's ultimately, it's not good for you. Even if your body is used to it, still not good for you. So that's the issue with processed foods. What kind of issues could arise? Any a myriad of
loaded
issues.
Question.
Yeah, a myriad of issues could arise because it's just, again, it's messing with your digestion. So your body's not going to digest it properly. I would immediately think, okay, this person's likely to have AMA, or those undigested food toxins that have accumulated because they're eating these foods that are not really digestible. There you go. And when you do, over time, your AMA, or those undigested food and emotion toxins in the body, if you keep living that way, you keep eating that way, those toxins can ferment.
Yeah.
When those toxins ferment in the gut, they pass through the leaky junctions in the gut. They enter the bloodstream. They can travel anywhere in the body and create much more severe issues like autoimmune diseases. You can have issues like cancer from things like that as well.
You talked about fermented foods. I live in an area where people ingest a high level of fermented foods. And I'm, no, don't do that. I think it's a US thing where it's a marketing gimmick. I'm just going to say that. Trying to say there's probiotic features of this food. Care to comment on that?
Yeah, some of my clients every client I've had has thought they were following a healthy diet. Some of them were eating fermented foods because they thought it was good for their gut. They thought it would help restore their gut microbiome. The problem with that is that in Ayurveda, it's an individual thing.
Right.
So what's good for some person to eat, it's not good for another person to eat. So there are some people that, yes, they can have fermented foods, and that will be good for them. And that will be good for their microbiome. But most people, not. So it's just some people.
Right.
So make sure that you know what foods are best for you, and those are the foods that you're eating most of the time.
Do you have an idea of who would not benefit from those? Is there a particular population or prakriti?
I would say especially pitta would not from fermented foods, but even vata. So fermented foods they're heating, not good for pitta. But then also they have that like airiness, that
Right.
space dynamic in them that really vitiates vata as well.
So people who are medium frame to smaller frame in general probably wouldn't benefit from this. People with a larger frame that have more kapha might be okay with it.
Might be, but make
Right.
sure you have your digestion assessed.
There you go.
Yeah, it has more to do
Okay.
with your digestion. You could be
Okay.
somebody, who's pitta, but you have more of a kapha digestion. It'd be okay for you in
Okay.
moderate. Of course, anything in excess is not good for you.
Makes sense. Going back to natural, okay, basic fundamental with eating, consuming foods. When you talk about processed foods, those could be, well, first of all, what would you consider processed foods like in your house?
Anything that is not a whole food, anything that comes in a package, processed. So I got like the canned foods, the frozen dinners, eat bread that comes in a bag that sits on a shelf for weeks and doesn't go bad. And it's not fresh bread, the bread at the grocery store, generally processed. I even think of pasta that way. Food, I think of that way. All those fake meats. I think of. There are processed meats too. Those too. Yeah, all of that.
That's why I get nervous when I see plant-based, because it's not vegetarian, which means something different in my mind. My experience is plant-based has been sold to, so you're not eating meats, which are not good for you kind of thing, right? And so you should eat this plant-based thing, which majority of the time I've seen it's a processed food, which is worse for that person than eating fresh cooked fruits and vegetables and possibly even meat for that matter. Because if the meat is fresh, they're eating salmon, for example, something like that would be far better than eating a processed package that it has chemicals in it. They're in there specifically to extend shelf life. So anything that's going to extend a shelf life has a potential of causing issues with the gut.
Yeah, that's right. That's why if somebody is vegetarian or a vegan and they're one of my clients, I want them to know how to make those things on their own, because a lot of that stuff you can make yourself. Like Just Egg is a great concept. Don't know what Just Egg is. It's some like egg alternative you can buy at the grocery store that they use split mung beans.
Yeah.
You can easily make it at home with fresh ingredients in the blender. It only takes you a couple minutes. Or your almond milk. That's really popular. A lot of people buying almond milk at the grocery store. If you look at the box of almond milk and you read the ingredients, how many of those ingredients can you just not read at all? If you can't read, you shouldn't put it in your body. If you don't know what it is, don't put it in your body. Almond milk is really easy to make for yourself at home.
Almond butter.
So better. Yeah. So much better when you make it yourself.
Yeah. Oat milk, same thing. Right. Yeah. And that's the one thing that may come in a package, oats, possibly, that it doesn't mean that they're processed, right? So if it's just the one ingredient, it says oats, that's all it's in there, you're probably good, right? Rice, basmati rice, for example, probably good. Yeah. So thank you for breaking that down. I wanted to touch on those things because there's see a lot of comments and questions specifically when it comes to types of foods and what's good, what's not, and why. So it's really helpful. Oh, I also want to highlight that there's a study, and I'll link it also in the podcast. We went over, I think it was the first semester Ayurvedic program. It talks about processed foods. And if you eat processed foods on a regular basis, they follow these folks, right? I think in general, they saw a weight gain of 1 pound a month. And when they eliminated the processed foods, they saw a weight loss. And I did that. I just cut out processed foods for the most part now. Every now and then I can't get around it. It's when I'm traveling, especially. But I'll tell you, when I am consistently not eating processed foods, I do work out, but it's not crazy. The weight is maintainable. I lost weight and a healthy amount, and not muscle, but fat, toxins, whatever else is in there. And I felt lighter, like you were talking about. I felt lighter. I felt better. I had more energy. And when I do go back to eating those, I can feel it in my skin. Like it just, my digestive system, especially sugar. There's something about that has an addictive quality.
Oh, yeah.
And it comes in many forms, right? So
Yeah.
it's
Sugar, it's like hitting those same receptors in the brain that cocaine does. Very addictive. There's a really good documentary called That Sugar Film. I absolutely recommend to everybody who eats sugar. It's okay. The sugar and sweet is one of those foods people are unsure about, very unsure about. And in Ayurveda, it's not like we want you to avoid the sweet taste entirely. It's just, what does that mean? Like, I'm following a Vata diet. I'm favoring sweet, sour, salty foods. Doesn't mean I'm eating a bunch of candy for that sweet taste. But what am I using to sweeten my foods? I'm using dates, jaggery, less processed. What kind of sweet? How are you making it sweet? How sweet is it? How much sweet are you having? When we juice our fruits, we're not having the fiber from the fruit. We're just drinking the juice. And that's a lot of sugar. And the fiber isn't in there to tell us, oh, I'm full. I want to stop now. So you can drink way more fruit than you could eat. You wouldn't be able to eat as much fruit as you are juicing into your cup.
That's a great analysis because I didn't think about that. A lot of people do a lot of the juicing, like the pressed juice, which a lot of sugar in there. And you're right. There's no fiber to fill them up. Very interesting.
That sugar film.
Yeah. Okay. Another check that if you could provide the link to that, I'll put that in the podcast. There's going to be a lot of links here.
Yeah.
But this episode, you talk about jaggery, dates, also fresh cooked pears and apples. You put those in your oatmeal. That's going to naturally sweeten it. And at first, I'll tell you, I want it, especially with balancing Vata, I also benefit from the sweetness too. And when you get used to it, when you put cooked pear with cardamom and cinnamon in that oatmeal, you get used to that sweetness. And so then when I do sometimes add dates, it's too sweet for me, which is a good thing. But dates are really good for you. If you eat them, don't eat too many of them. It is sugary. I mean, it's a lot of sweet.
Yeah.
So you've completed your Master's of Science in Ayurveda at Maharishi International University. You talked about Marma. Are there other areas that you explored also that you wanted to specialize in?
Yeah, I also enjoy beauty care. I think it's fun. And that I make products of my own. I make a hair oil, a face oil, a lip oil. I'll make for specific clients, I'll do a custom face mask, a custom hair mask, things like that. I'll make topically to apply. And you can apply your herbs topically, and that's good. That's a good way to take your herbs. It's totally valid and great. But beauty really comes from inside.
Right.
I mean that in a cliche way.
Yeah.
Because your beauty comes from within. Yes, it does. And also just the food you're putting in your body, the toxins, it all impacts what you're seeing on the outside too. So if somebody has some problem like psoriasis, I make beauty products that can benefit that. I can give someone a facial that will be beneficial for their psoriasis, and it might help. But if they're not eliminating the causative factors, if they're not eliminating the cause, getting to that root cause, and addressing their digestion too, because generally psoriasis and digestion issues go hand in hand. If you're not going to do that, then it's just going to keep coming back. You can offer the topical products, and it's fun, it's nice, it's beneficial, but it's complementary.
Right.
It like complements that deeper approach to really addressing imbalances in the physiology. So that's something I enjoy. And then I also specialize in nervous system issues and articular system issues. That's your joints and autoimmune disease. Those are some of the chief complaints that I will deal with in my practice.
And there's a lot of that going around. It really is. Going back to what you said with the superficial, like the care, I love it. Get a facial, but that's not just putting a product on, it's actually massaging and then the relaxation helps to calm the mind. But what I have said to folks is working in on the inside will reflect on the outside. And it's true. There's days where my skin feels dry and it's the weather changes and all of that, but it's also what I'm eating and what my daily routine and the amount of sleep, all of that. Like, oh, and it even affects the way that I feel because of that. Whereas when you feel like you're glowing and you have that vitality and things are in balance, it's going to make you feel good. And that's why we go through those days, right? Because it's whatever's going on the inside is going to reflect on the outside, which I think is awesome. So looking at the nervous system, the joints, and autoimmune, do you have any success stories you want to share with folks? Like someone who came in with osteoarthritis would be affecting the joints, or rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmune. And have you seen any cases where people were able to completely reverse whatever that imbalance was?
Yeah, often. I'd say it's not often that I see clients who can't reverse whatever issue that they have, whatever it is, as long as they're following their protocol. It's been really less often that I see people who don't make a full recovery, you could say. I think it has to do with how well you're following your protocol. So I have a good example of someone that I saw who had ulcerative colitis. I deal with digestion as well. That's just like the core of Ayurveda in a way. So I had a client with ulcerative colitis who had that problem for over 15 years. It was really difficult for that client. They had so many symptoms. It was chronic. They started to follow their protocol. I walked them through a cleanse. They were following their protocol. All of their symptoms went away. And that took how long? Less than a year. Less than a year. All symptoms gone. Feeling good for the first time in over 15 years. And they maintained their protocol, following that good diet and that good routine for maybe 2 years. And then they decided to take a cheat weekend, and that became a cheat month, cheat years. So it can be a slippery slope again, because if you remove the causative factors, boom, problem gone. But if you bring all of them back in, the problem can come back. It can come back if you reintroduce all those. So when my clients follow their protocol, what I want them to do is slowly, gradually make those changes that are outlined in the protocol. I don't want my clients to go from I wake up at 8 a.m. every day to I wake up at 5:30 a.m. every day. No, because they're not going to be able to sustain that. First of all, they're going to feel terrible right off the bat. So gradually making that change is going to help them hang on to it for longer. I also think that things like practicing TM regularly can help people maintain their protocol and their balanced health once they are doing better. I think a lot of it can be self-sabotage, but when we're connected to ourselves, we know what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing. So I've seen it. I've seen all kinds of things. I've seen a client who had rheumatoid arthritis for over 20 years, probably over 30 years. She had it as a young teenager, was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And then I saw her for it was a 5-minute consultation with a friend of a friend. I walked in on my friend and her friend having lunch. The friend of my friend asked for some quick advice on Ayurveda. I took a quick look at what they were eating.
Yeah.
And I gave her 5 minutes of advice. That's it. Very short. My consultations are usually an hour and a half. I gave her maybe 3 pieces of advice. Very simple, basic things. She followed all of them. And 2 weeks later, she walked without pain for the first time in 20, 30 years. That's incredible. That's incredible. So I think a lot of it has to do with how well you're following your protocol, but also how you go about following your protocol. And I think that there needs to be that awareness that if you're restored to balance, you've removed all the causative factors, want to reintroduce all of them, you can, but now you've brought all the causative factors back, and that means the problem come back. Or some other problem could arise as well. Depends. Yeah.
Anything's possible. I agree. To put this in perspective, as an Ayurvedic practitioner, this is what I've heard. This is what I'm starting to experience as well, is the most challenging cases usually come to people that work in the naturopathy field, possibly Chinese medicine. I don't have it, anybody, but specifically Ayurveda. Why? People are at their limits. Like, they have tried everything else and nothing's worked. And now they're like, I need help. And like you said, just simple changes can make such a huge improvement. And you do a check-in with them and they're like, wow, I do feel better. It incentivizes them to try the next phase and the next phase and the next phase and go from there. And what helps them to incentivize that sticking point is consistency. And yes, it's happened many times. I'm guilty of it, where I've gone off the path, right? Because of travel, sometimes things outside of your control. But now, like, for example, when I travel and I'm in a car, I make my own khichdi. And even though we're not supposed to have leftovers, it's better to have leftovers that are a day old versus eating out. And I'll try to bring my own food and stay in an Airbnb so I can cook my own food. So that really helps a lot. Now, I still will eat out like a meal or two because I go out with colleagues, business meetings, and that kind of stuff. But if you minimize the amount of times that you need to do that when you're traveling, there's ways of trying to offset that where you're not completely eliminating eating out, but at least during your travels, you're trying to keep some stable routine or practice.
Yeah, I think that's something so important, Kristen, that really we want to make Ayurveda accessible to people.
Yeah.
And that means you have to be practical. So if our clients travel for their work, or they are going to eat out sometimes. Sometimes your clients are going to go to their friend's house for dinner and they're going to eat something that they shouldn't eat. It's going to happen, but it's how you handle that. There are other things you can do. So if I'm going out to eat, I'm going to look at the menu very carefully and I'm going to try to pick something that doesn't have cruciferous vegetables in it, because I know that aggravates my vata. Or I'm not gonna have any raw food. I'm gonna make sure I'm only eating cooked foods when I'm eating out. I'm gonna bring my digestive tea with me, and I'm gonna drink it before my meal at the restaurant.
Good idea.
I am going to a friend's house for a meal. I'll bring a dish to share and eat, and then very carefully eat, what I can eat that my friend has prepared. I won't eat all of it. My friends already know and they're not upset. So that's the workaround.
That's fair. I think that's a great strategy. So in your practice, when you specialize, you talked about autoimmune conditions, nervous systems, articular system, beauty care, digestive wellness. What are some common misconceptions you encounter about Ayurveda in these areas? And how do you address them with your clients?
Okay. I think across the board, the number one misconception was something that was my own, that I think I'm eating a healthy diet already. Every client I've ever had that's coming to see me, they all think they're following a healthy diet and lifestyle already. So they're like, what herbs can I take? Some people think herbs are the solution. Most people. But it's not the solution. And like we talked about again and again, it's so you need the right foods for you. So maybe you're eating a healthy diet by the standards of the whole country, and that's great. It is. But eating the right diet for you as an individual is going to make a big difference. And then when it comes to herbs and thinking herbs are addressing everything, that's not the case either. Herbs in Ayurveda, it's like a bonus. So really we say that diet and lifestyle can encompass 100% of your treatment. And herbs are just a bonus. Herbs are great. They can help. They are your allies. They can help mitigate your symptoms and bring some balance back to the physiology. But that's while you're addressing the issues, while you're removing the causative factors, while you're repairing your digestion. So it's just help to assist, but not to be the sole treatment.
And we also, at least this is my approach, don't want to necessarily switch out from pharmaceuticals, supplements to herbs. It's still use it when necessary, but not as a crutch to try to overcome an irregular schedule or lack sleep or you're eating the wrong food kind of thing. You're like, oh, if I just eat some truffula, that might help, which it will. But still, the underlying issue, if it's still there, like you said, it's still going to bubble up to the top, so to speak, and create complications down the road.
Yeah.
Preventative care is something that you emphasize in your practice. As we're going through this conversation, preventative versus reactive, we contrasted that with Western medicine. Why do you feel it's important? And you may have already addressed this in the earlier part, but more emphasizing how can Ayurveda help people take a proactive approach to their health before their issues arise?
Yeah. So preventative care is so great. I love when I see clients for preventative care because it's so easy. What do I mean by that? As the wonderful Benjamin Franklin said, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So if you can avoid creating imbalances, if you can avoid getting sick, if you can avoid it, it's a lot easier to avoid it than it is to address it. Have a problem. It's a lot easier. Now in Ayurveda, how do we handle that? Again, it's so simple. It's just, what should you as an individual be eating?
Yeah.
What exercises are best for you as an individual? I'll look at the lifestyle and maybe we'll find some causative factors that are there, but nothing's manifested yet. Stress is so common, right? How can we address that? So the preventative care plan is always a very simple one. And yeah, it's best if you can just prevent yourself from getting sick in the first place. Always.
It's like when you turn your heat completely off in your house and it's now down to 30 to 40 degrees because you live out in the snow. It's snowing out in your climate.
Yeah.
And now I better turn the heater on. It's going to take that much longer and that much expense of heat to get it to rise to heat up the entire house versus maintaining the heat at a nominal temperature that you just have to slightly adjust to, right?
Yeah.
More energy to have to, just like when you're driving on the freeway, going a stable, consistent speed, you won't consume as much gas as if you're slowing down, speeding up, slowing down, speeding up. The same thing with your health. If you let things fall too far backward, it's going to take that much more energy and time and money potentially to get things back and what you've lost as far as quality of life in the meantime.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. And I like to really emphasize in that state of balance, just reminding clients that your body always knows what it needs. If someone comes to me for preventative care and they're already in a balanced state, or maybe they have a minor imbalance, we address it. But when you're in that balanced state, just remember to listen to your body. That's it.
Good point. So you work with adults. Can't remember if you said if you work with children or not.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So are there any specific approaches or treatments that you find more effective when working with younger clients versus older?
Yeah. Okay. So I always think about herbs first with children because a lot of the herbs, children might not think they taste very good. It might be like bitter or sour taste that a child might not like. Probably won't, especially in the West where you're used to a certain kind of diet. So with children, the carrier for the herbs is generally going to be honey. Almost always going to be honey because honey's sweet. That's why.
Yep.
Not
And
for
they'll be
any
all
other.
over that.
Yeah, because usually with the carriers for herbs, like for adults, it's more specific to like where what part of the body you're targeting, what kind of issue that they have, that kind of thing. But with a child, it's going to be honey because it's sweet. And we want them to take their herbs and we want them to enjoy their herbs and be receptive to them. So even I wouldn't start a child with their full dose. I would have a target dose for them to take. And then they would start by just putting a pinch of it and mixing it in with the honey and increasing amounts until they're taking their full dose. That's acclimate them to the taste of the herbs so that they're used to it and they can be receptive. Because similar to our conversation earlier about like miracles and being open to that, I think that when you take your herbs, taking them with a receptive attitude and gratitude, you can receive your herbs with gratitude. You can receive them. You can receive them. If you're like, oh, if it doesn't taste good, I don't want to take it, especially kids. They're more like, yeah, no, I don't want to take it. That's not going to help them. It's not going to help them. And then you're getting like this mental trauma almost just from taking the herbs. So it's a lot better when they can just enjoy it or not mind it at all and take the herbs. Then the herbs can benefit them more. That's something I think about with kids. Another thing I think about with kids is they're in that cough stage of life. There are certain issues they're more prone to, like we talked about earlier, colds, stuffy nose and runny nose and ear infections, blockages in the body. And so there are certain lifestyle and diet things that I'll pay more attention to with kids. Like, when are they taking their bath at night? Because a lot of parents, I don't know why, but it's so common. Most kids take their bath at night before bed. But a lot of times the bath is after dinner. So I ate my dinner, now I'm taking a bath. And now I'm going to bed. It's not good in Ayurveda. So I pay special attention to that with kids for that reason. Because when you eat something and then you take a bath or a shower even, it brings your digestive fire to the surface of the skin surface. And then that means your digestive fire is not digesting the food that you just ate.
Slows it down.
That's creating toxins in the body. And those toxins in the body are so heavy, sticky. That creates problems like the cold, the ear infection. And then you're going to bed right afterwards as a kid too. At nighttime, your channels are closed or they're more closed. So they're more narrow.
Yeah.
So blockages are much easier to form. If you've got if they're open, the channels are open, like it might get a little clogged, but at night, they're going to get clogged, really clogged. The wet hair, all of it. It's something to pay attention to.
What would you recommend that they do then? Because a lot of times they want their children to bathe before you go to bed because they're playing outside and all of that stuff.
Yeah. No, I all I'd say is just switch it around. Take your bath and then eat your dinner.
Good idea. And then make sure there's enough time after they eat before they go to bed.
Yeah.
Like 2 to 3 hours, something like that.
Yeah, some quiet time to look at books and do puzzles and color. Quiet time. That's good.
Great idea. So while you're cooking dinner, go take a bath.
Yeah, exactly.
Keep yourself busy. Knock yourself out. Play with your ducky, whatever.
That's right.
Yeah, good idea. So as far as Ayurveda, how to wish, what's your vision of Ayurveda in the future in the U.S. especially?
Ayurveda for everyone, everywhere.
I love that. I love that tagline.
I want it to be accessible to people. I want people to know about it. I want people in underprivileged communities to be able to get consultations. I know that it can be costly, especially because health insurance doesn't cover Ayurveda.
Right.
So some people want Ayurveda to be covered by health insurance. And that could be one way that works out. For me, my personal goals, I'd love to have pop-up clinics in underprivileged communities where people can get either free or very low cost consultations. And those consultations would emphasize diet and lifestyle,
Right.
primarily because herbs can be costly. There could be some herbs, but it would have to be low cost herbs and it would have to be practical. I'd like to have that. I currently offer a sliding scale in my practice. So if somebody can't afford consultation, I'm still willing to work with them at a lower price if they have the financial need. That's just something that I like to offer. Yeah, so that's what I'd like to see. I think it would be cool if children somehow were educated about Ayurveda too. Like, I'd like to see kids at a young age being exposed to Ayurveda. Like, my kids are fortunate to
Yeah.
have that knowledge, that base of knowledge, but I think that also starts with parents.
Right.
It doesn't matter if the kids know about Ayurveda, if the parents don't know about Ayurveda. So there has to be some kind of an educational aspect that I would like to see somehow come into play, maybe in schools or through schools for kids and parents to learn about how. Maybe it comes through pediatricians or something, but just some more information for people about preventative care, Ayurveda.
But here's one of the challenges that I've heard through some of the folks in Western medicine is, first of all, they don't know what Ayurveda is. A lot of the times they don't know what the herbs are, and they don't know where to find a good qualified practitioner. That is a huge gap, that knowing where to find people. And
Yeah.
even if they had the ability to educate their client or their patients for the most part, and even a psychotherapist, where do I find this person? They could Google it, but so could the client, but they don't know. Just because someone is an Ayurvedic practitioner or anything for that matter, doesn't mean they're necessarily a good fit. And so
Right.
sifting through that can be challenging.
Yes. Okay.
And is that practitioner going to be able to help them with their particular chronic illness, for example? Because folks will find their niche on what they're going to focus on. I'm sure you'll see all clients and patients that come to you, but there might be someone who might be more experienced with a chronic illness.
Yeah.
Because they've experienced it themselves, or they worked with clients or patients that had that before and have been successful.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point, Kristen. I wish I had an answer.
Oh, I have an answer.
Yeah. Oh, you have an answer. Oh, good. Let's hear
Yeah,
it.
I have a collaborative healthcare model that puts everybody on one platform and they know each other. They know the Western medicine. I have nurse practitioners, some doctors in the future and psychotherapists that know Ayurvedic practitioners that practice in that area and what they can help them with. So they're able to collaborate or refer to, or at least ask the questions of, what is this? How does this help them? I'm curious, and I'd love to send my patient to you, but I'm not sure. Can you help with this thing? And do you have any previous cases that you've helped people with? And it just opens up that door. That conversation itself opens the door. And we're actually doing that right now with folks that have fibromyalgia and many of the chronic illnesses that people are affected with that go along with fibromyalgia. There's a long list ranging from chronic fatigue all the way to autoimmune.
Yeah.
So anyway, there's an answer there, and hopefully more are starting to do that in the future. Because
I love that answer.
yeah, just even bringing pharmacists on there so they can and toxicologists to educate physicians as to, this is what's going to happen for long-term use of those meds. And when you pair these two together or five together, right? Here's where it's going to lead. And there's an Ayurvedic doctor in the Bay Area. Hopefully she watches this episode. And she came from Big Pharma. So she understands pharmaceuticals, but she also is an Ayurvedic doctor. And so she understands herbs. So she understands how they can interact with each other.
Amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. And I think that can answer a lot of questions for anyone going forward. So there's answers. It's, how do we get there, and how do we fund these things for people who can't afford it? Perhaps we can create other funding mechanisms outside of insurance, because insurance tends to limit folks on who they can choose and how they go forward, maybe a separate funding mechanism can allow more freedom for patients and clients to choose the providers they need. As long as a person's vetted, they have to go through some form of vetting process, all that. What is one piece of advice or wisdom that you would like to give someone who is just hearing about Ayurveda for the first time? Let's assume there's many that had never, they still don't know how to spell it, which I had to learn that too, who are struggling with health. Maybe let's say they have a chronic health concern, which there seems to be a lot of that going around today. If they feel bad, or maybe they've been told that there's no solution, there's no way out of it. What kind of advice would you provide to that person or people?
Yeah. First of all, I'd like to just emphasize that what I said earlier about miracles, I believe in miracles. And I think that if you want to receive one, you need to be open to that. Other advice, see an Ayurvedic practitioner.
Yes.
Do it. See an Ayurvedic practitioner. Strive towards restoring balance to your physiology, because when you're in that state of balance, you'll always know what you need. What will make that easiest is, in my opinion, learning TM. Go learn transcendental meditation. That's probably one of the best things that you can do besides in conjunction with Ayurveda, because that will help you reconnect to your higher self, yourself, your consciousness, your spirit, whatever you want to say. It will help you reconnect. And when you are connected, you're more likely to make the right choices. And that is going to be helpful to you on that path of balance. And TM, it will benefit you mentally, physically, all of that. So I think it's a really great focal point for people.
It's excellent. And also the other aspect too is some people may not open up that door to TM yet. Let's just say there are other things, ways to get you to a transcendental state. I feel TM is the most effective. I'm just going to say that, but I'm open to other people have different perspectives and experiences. Is sound therapy. Some forms of sound therapy, when you're in a relaxed state, can help you go to a transcendental state, and it can regulate the physiology, the nervous system. And I've seen many people actually benefit from that too. I do that, but I do that in addition to TM.
Yeah, I love sound therapy. It's amazing. There are so many things that you can do to restore that connection with self. There are many kinds of meditations that you could be doing. There are the sound vibration therapy. You can do the breathing pranayama techniques. So many things you can do. In my personal experience, having done many of these things, TM is it's very accessible because it's something easy. You can do it on your own. You can do it twice a day.
Right?
Boom. Very effortless, quick.
Yeah. TM.org, everybody. Check it out. You just type in your zip code and then you can find a TM instructor. So Transcendental Meditation is what that stands for. So you can find someone who can help walk you through it and see if that's something that's a good fit. I delayed it, and I was pretty bummed that I did that. I wish I had started it decades ago. Would have made a huge difference. And same with Ayurveda, but you know what? Everything always comes just at the right time. So where can people find you, Radhika?
Oh, yeah. My website is www.ayurvedama.com. That's AYURVEDAMA.com.
Do you have any social media?
I have Instagram and Facebook, and the links are just on my website. It's Ayurveda across the board.
And what state are you located? So you can share in case people, do you see people in person and online?
Yeah, I see people virtually and online. I am based in San Diego, California. I'll be in Florida, in North Florida until June though. So if someone's in North Florida, they want to see me in the meantime. But yeah, I accept virtual consultations as well.
Awesome. Is there anything else you want to add before we jump off?
Not that I can think of.
Okay. All right. I think there's a lot of information with this episode. We may have you back if you want to, and maybe even have another guest on so we can talk collaboration or go into some of the areas more deep or specific, because I think there's a lot here to explore.
There's a lot that we could talk about, definitely.
Yeah. And years of knowledge. Thank you so much for your time. We're so grateful. And it's such an honor to have you on the Your Health is Wealth podcast. And we will share all of her links and any of the research links also with the podcast. It will go on Spotify, Amazon, and Apple Podcast. The video version will be on Spotify and also YouTube. And then we'll also post some short videos on other social media as well. Okay, grateful. And have a great day. Have a great rest of your Sunday.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you so much. As we wrap up today's episode, I think the key takeaway is that healing is a lifelong journey, and Ayurveda is an invaluable companion along the way. Radhika's deep dedication to this ancient system has not only helped her personally, but it's inspired many others on their own health journey. Her story reminds us that there are always alternatives, even when we're told there's no solution. Healing isn't linear, and sometimes it's about tuning into the soul's wisdom. So whether you're just learning about Ayurveda through this conversation, or you've been practicing for years, remember that it's the power to heal that lies within. Ayurveda offers a path that is personal, spiritual, and incredibly transformative. Thank you, Radhika, for sharing your incredible story with us. And all of our listeners, trust your body, trust the process, and know that you have everything that you need within yourself for true healing. Until next time, stay balanced, stay well, and remember, your health is truly your wealth. Thank you so much. We are interested in feedback on our episodes and learning what topics you may be interested in for future episodes. Please follow us on Instagram, Your Health is Wealth Podcast. Also, our website, yourhealthiswealth.com, and is spelled with a Z instead of an S, for yourhealthiswealth.com. The link to the website is also found on the Instagram bio as well. On our website, we list the episodes, and there is an online form where you can fill it out, share your feedback, ask questions, share input on future topics, and also contact us if you're interested in being featured on the podcast. Topic scope is related to health and wellness. Thank you very much for listening to our podcast today, and look forward to more. Have a great day, everybody. Take care.